welcome everybody to Mom Street USA. My name is Jackie, aka Wishes Mama, and this evening, as always, I am joined by my wonderful co-host Kate, aka the Disney Cicerone. And our topic for this episode is kind of a hot topic, depending on your opinion. But we are talking what not to do on a Disney family trip. Basically, going over top mistakes that you can make when you are visiting the parks with your family. And I think Kate and I both have some personal experiences to share tonight on this topic.
Sadly, that is true. I mean, but you feel forward, right? You learn, right. But these are things that we want to make sure you guys know going into it, so you don't make the same mistakes we did, or that some of our listeners did that it gave us some input. We want to make sure that you are in the know of some potential mistakes that you could make that you can then avoid making. Knowledge is power.
Absolutely. And we do want to give a disclaimer before we jump into all of this content that we are speaking this evening on mistakes that you could make. We are not speaking about rule breaking or law breaking or any of those types of things. So take that off the table for this evening.
Obviously, don't do those things.
Yes.
Follow
do not do those things. Do not break the rules at Disney. Do not break the law, especially at Disney, but just a general, make smart choices. But so we're talking tonight about mistakes that people make that could affect the amount that they do on their trip, could affect the happiness of their traveling party on their trip, all of those types of things. So that's the focus for this evening.
Yeah. So I agree. Like, I think it's a given. Like, don't just follow the rules, friends. Just do that.
Yes.
But we want to make sure that you guys have all the knowledge you need to have the best Disney vacation you can for yourself, your family, whoever you're taking with you. And so I actually was surprised by how many things we came up with, and there's still people that are adding more. Like, we see our good friend Conductor Jackson saying mistakes people make as a CM. He says they go in the wrong line for an attraction. Like, there's this list could go on for a while. So yes. I think that Jackie and I are going to try to be very succinct with some of these things, only because we've talked about some of them before on previous episodes. So we're not going to go in depth in detail on every single point. More, we just want to give you a general look out for this. And then if you have questions about it, feel free to ask us, send us an email, contact us on social media if you need more information about any of these things. We'd be happy to help you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think I'm going to jump in since we've got such an extensive list to share with you guys for this episode. One of the first things that came to my mind when I was thinking about things not to do is not making your resort reservation early enough in advance. Mm-hmm. So this is one that we have touched on in several other episodes, but you want to make sure that you get that resort booked, whether you're staying on property, off property, good neighbor hotel, decide all of that and get it booked, especially if you're traveling during school breaks, holidays, all those types of things. You want to get that booked as soon as you know what dates you're going.
Yeah, and I think if you really want to stay at a specific resort, usually like 11 months out is a good benchmark. I know that's when you can start renting DVC properties as well, is at 11 months out. So just think, it's almost a year out is what you really want to be thinking. That doesn't mean that there won't be some things, especially certain times of year, that are available sooner. Just plan ahead is our best advice.
Yes. Absolutely, which will shock no one that is our first
to plan. Shocker. Yeah, and our good friend Erin is adding, utilize a travel agent to help with it. Totally free and helpful. That if that's something that you really want to do, you're like, just take it out of my hands. I don't want to deal with it. Travel agents are wonderful for that, and they are usually free. So that is a very good tip as well. So this one is make park reservations if needed, which is something that if you've not been to Disney in a while, probably wouldn't be on your radar, because this is the actual reservation to get into the park. That means you have your tickets and you have your resort reservation. You need a physical reservation to get into parks. Now, this is like getting a little bit more complicated as of the first of the year, and there's a whole bunch of like, if you have this specific package or ticket or what, just make sure that you know if you need a reservation that you've made it. I guess is the
Yes.
best way succinctly to put that.
Yes, because starting, I think, January 9th, maybe,
Yeah.
I think it is, that if you have a package ticket or a dated ticket, you don't need a reservation, but annual pass holders still need reservations. So yes, they have it laid out really nicely in a chart on the Disney World website. And this is Disney World we're talking. Disneyland, I think, is different.
Yes.
So
You have to,
take a
when you
look.
buy a ticket to Disneyland, you automatically have to make a reservation at the same time.
Right.
So you will still need that reservation, but it's not as like critical to think about as it does at Disney World because they're sometimes unlinked to each other.
Yes. So just make sure that you look on the Disney World website, because like I said, they've got a really nice chart that breaks down if you've got this kind of ticket, yes or no kind of deal. So look that up. Or if you're using a travel agent, they probably already know whether or not you need one and will help you take care of that. But just make sure you have that checked off your to-do list.
We do have a comment from Conductor Jackson, which is a good point. He said, always have the confirmation email handy just in case you run into an issue at the entrance. That's also true. We always say screenshot everything, every confirmation, every ticket. just screenshot it, because for some reason, sometimes these things disappear from the app and they go away. And you're like, so screenshot confirmation, screenshot things. You can go back and delete them later and take them off your phone. Just have a copy of it somewhere saved on your phone so that you have proof of everything when you go places.
Yes, absolutely. And I think you've mentioned before that Disneyland tends to sell out of their reservations more quickly than Disney World. That may change going forward with some of the new things after the first of the year, but just, again, make your resort reservation, make your park reservation if you need one. Just do it all as soon as you know your dates.
Yeah, in Disneyland, there's been many, many days when I've walking into the park and they have the little sandwich board sign out that says like reservations are full for today. And I'm like, ooh, that sign gives me so much anxiety even when I do have one. So
right. Yeah. And our friend Kathy B does make a good point. She said she has had everything delete when the app was doing an update. So it's always important to have those screenshots. I mean, when I help people book even, I screenshot everything and send them all the screenshots too, because it's like, better safe than sorry. Have it done so you know that you have that confirmation.
Yeah, it's also great with Lightning Lane reservations as well.
Yes.
So all the things that you book, do a screenshot just for safety.
And that segues perfectly into the next option that we have, or the next item on our list of what not to do, is not making reservations for dining or any extras that you may want to do on your trip. So making sure that you know what date your dining is for you to be able to book that 60 days out of your check-in date. If you're going to be booking something like trying to get Bippity Boppity Boutique, or trying to get a VIP tour, or trying to get any of those extra packages, they have a bunch of stuff at Animal Kingdom, all of the above. Make sure you know when you're eligible to book and make sure you hop on and book it right away. And also booking more table services potentially than your family would do. So that way you've got options and you can always go back in and cancel and modify later, but just having those available for you so that you don't miss out on that opportunity.
With the caveat of don't book a million of them and hold them so other people can have them. Like go to ones, only things that you would potentially go to, but maybe if you're tired, cancel them. So let's be kind and courteous to everybody.
Very true. Very, very true. Absolutely. I think Kate you put a message. I can't talk. You put a note on here about not limiting your freedom and spontaneity while you're there at the parks too.
Yeah, can I explain that a little bit?
Yeah,
I want to say, I think that I like what you said, but I'm saying like the opposite. Like, be careful you don't overbook your reservations, that you don't overschedule. So I think our good friend Kirk from Walrus Carp, who is a theme park expert as well, he said, doing 2 table services in one day is an awful lot because it takes a lot of time away from the parks. And some of those sit-down meals can take upwards 2 hours plus, depending on where you go. So, if you like that and you want a slower pace and you want to sit down, that's great. And that's your vacation and do that. But just if you don't go to Disney often and you're like, oh, I'll just book these for like lunch and dinner, and it's going to take a lot of time out of your trip. It does limit your freedom, your choices when you go and be spontaneous. And it just takes a huge chunk of the day away that you might be anxious to get back out there and get stuff done. So,
yeah. And either way, whether you want to do the slower pace or want to have more freedom, just make sure you book it. That's really the important thing. Is either way, no matter which way your party is going to lean, just make sure you book it as soon as you're eligible, so that way you don't miss out on those really hard to get reservations, because even then you still might miss out on those really hard to get reservations. And we've talked about using dining alerts and all those types of things to help you get those. But either way, just make sure you're booking them when you're eligible to book them.
Yes, absolutely. Speaking of booking things, moving on to number 4 of our mistakes that families make. I think one of them is booking your flight schedule into Disney based on the cost alone and not on your actual schedule. Now, I understand. Believe me, I understand how money is tight and it gets tighter every day. And I understand the wanting to save a few dollars, but I'm going to tell you, if it's like $20 difference, fly in at a time that is better and easier for your family. Maybe don't do the red eye, or do the red eye if that makes more sense than flying in late at night and being exhausted for the next day. Like, whatever works for your particular family and your family's schedules. I have done the cheap flight thing where you have 3 layovers and then you get there at 1 a.m. and then the next day is so awful. It just is bad. So don't, do that to yourself. Recognize that when you fly can really affect the beginning of your vacation. And sometimes you have to play catch up for a day or two with your sleep if that was really tough traveling there. So be careful when you book your flights.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's super important. And it varies depending on who you're traveling with. If you're going by yourself or just you and your spouse, maybe you can handle landing at 11 p.m. But if you're traveling with a 2-year-old, maybe that won't fly for them, literally. So, just keep that in mind. Absolutely. But the next one is one that I feel like you have heard us talk about probably 100 times on various different episodes. But one of the biggest mistakes that we see families making is not doing your ride priority list for the parks. We've talked about this. We've talked about how important it is to make that list. Without that, you're going to be just wandering or just standing in the middle of the walkways trying to figure out where to go next. Having a plan, having an itinerary, knowing what your top 3 or 4 rides are is so important, because then there's no question about it. You can just go from one to the next, to the next, to the next, especially during those early morning hours. They're so important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I asked my husband what he thought were the biggest mistakes we've ever made at Disney. And one of his biggest ones was the asking, what do you want to do? I don't know. What do you want to do? And everybody huddled around the map or the app or whatever, trying to figure out what to do next is such a huge waste of time. I mean, that's really what you want to do on your vacation. No, no shade, but that's not something that my husband enjoys. It's not something that I enjoy, because everybody has different opinions and it becomes this huge debate. It's just we'll just go in with a plan with everybody's favorites and just execute the plan is just easier in general.
And I feel like even with that plan, it's still inevitably going to happen that at some point throughout the day, you're going to go, what do you want to do? I don't know. What do you want to do? I don't know. Or you're going to go, do you want to do this? Do you want to do this? Do you want to, throwing out some options. But even still, having that priority list to at least start your day off is going to put you in a good position to have just a much more stress-free visit to the parks.
Yeah, you do not want to start your day with what do you want to do when it's the time is ticking and there's only so many minutes of low line time. Yeah. So don't do that. I will mention just real quickly, we talked about flights and being careful about your schedule, but someone also mentioned, Chris also mentioned, where you fly in is also important. I actually don't know this one. I fly into MCO all the time for Disney. She said SFB, which I don't even know what that airport code is because I've never flown there.
Sanford.
Yeah. Okay.
So there's also,
I don't know what that one.
Yeah, there's also the Sanford area airport, which is, I mean, it's probably a solid 45 to an hour from property, but a lot of the smaller airports from this side of the country will fly into Sanford. So I live close-ish to the Dayton airport in Ohio. It's a very small airport. It flies directly into Sanford.
Gotcha.
With Allegiant and some of those cheaper flight options will go there. So just be aware. it's not fun to make that drive. You're going to pay probably what you saved in an Uber if you're going to Sanford instead of MCO. Unless you've got a really good reason, I highly suggest you do not fly into Sanford.
Yeah, and the same thing goes for Disneyland. I always recommend people fly into John Wayne, Orange County, SNA, and not LAX. I highly discourage LAX. It's on the other side of LA from Disneyland. And if you hit rush hour traffic, it's hours that you're on the road. So just try not to. If you think you're saving money, it's going to be awful. And it's expensive too for Lyft or Uber to get across the city. So take that into account.
Yes, absolutely. Perfect. Okay, are we ready to, I think we're on you. I think we're on the next one.
Yeah. Okay. So another mistake I think a lot of people make is not making time for photos. Family photos. I think a lot of families do this, like you see the massive lines at Disneyland to take pictures with like the Mickey pumpkin during Halloween time and things like that, and the tree. But I think we can often forget to do that because we're so like set on getting places that we forget. Maybe we take one morning picture, we don't take any others the whole trip or whatever. And we also don't take advantage of those PhotoPass photographers. If you've bought the photo package, or in Disneyland, if you've bought Genie Plus, photos are included with those PhotoPass photographers with your Genie Plus purchase. So not taking advantage of that is really sad because, it allows everybody to get in the photo, even moms who maybe don't get in the photo, maybe dads who don't get in the photo because they're busy behind the camera. Really helps everybody get in the picture.
Yeah, that is something that we have found we've had to, like, now that we go with our kids, when it was just my husband and I, we would do selfies, we would do quick, it was not a big deal, but like we typically get PhotoPass with our kids now that we go, and it's like, no, we have to stop. We got to take a picture, like, oh, like there's and it's one of those things where it's like, when we see the PhotoPass photographer, it's like, okay, nope, we're stopping, go take a picture. Even if it's like, okay, my son doesn't want to take a picture on this one and just my daughter is agreeing to, okay, cool, she gets solo shots on this one.
Yeah.
We've got some great photos that way. So it's definitely worth it.
Yeah. And I agree. Erin is saying I try to do a lot of candid spur of the moment pics with my phone. So a lot of non-post photos sometimes end up being your favorites. So keep that in mind as well, to focus on those as well, not just everybody standing around staring at the camera, as much as we love those as well. So
yeah, a little bit of both. I think
a
good mix. So
yes,
perfect.
I agree.
Okay, next on our list of mistakes that families make at Disney is forgetting to check the weather for your trip, but checking it also several times before you pack.
And while you're there.
So right, also that, but so important. Like I will check it like, as soon as I can, because you get so excited that you want to see what the weather's going to be like when you're there. As soon as my weather app will go
like
far
6
enough.
months in advance.
No.
Like Jackie.
No, my weather app only goes like 3 weeks in advance. So like as soon as those dates pop up on my weather app, I'm scrolling to see what it's going to be like. But then I always have to check it several times. One of the last trips that we took as a family, we went in October. About 10 days before we went, there was a tropical storm that went through, and it totally wonked out the weather. And the week before we were there was super chilly. It was like in the low 60s for the highs. And then the week that we went, it swung it up the other way, and it was like 85, 90 degrees the entire week we were there. Yeah. And that literally changed like within the like 2 or 3 days before we went, because it was that weird tropical storm situation. So checking it up until the day before you leave, the day that you leave, to make sure if you need to grab an extra sweater, you have the ability to do that.
Yeah, and I also would throw in always be prepared for rain, especially in Florida. Yes. Also, though, they've had a really rainy year last year in California as well. So keep that in mind. But there's almost always those afternoon thunder showers in Florida. Some days are just straight on rain most of the day. Just be prepared with your poncho, your umbrella, whatever it is that is your preferred method. I prefer ponchos just because they're easy to slip into our bags and always have there just in case. But I've been getting on the umbrella club recently, so I don't know. Maybe I'm switching.
I think for me, it always depends on, like, am I traveling with my kids, and do I have a stroller? Like, there's various different situations where I prefer an umbrella versus a poncho. So it just depends. But either way, have something with you.
Yeah, and also layers are kind of your best friend a lot of the time, especially I will say in California. They have what is like a marine fog that comes in from the ocean in the morning that burns off
Yeah.
by the afternoon. So when you leave in the morning, it might be a little chilly and overcast, and you just think that's how it's going to be all day. By the afternoon, it's 80s, 90s, and you're really, really hot. So just layers is your best friend there. Okay, so the next one is what I think is really interesting, Jackie. You added this one, and I hadn't really thought about that before. Mistake we wouldn't make at Disney is eating at chain restaurants that you can find near home. Do you want to elaborate a little bit about that?
Yeah, I just feel like there are some choices of restaurants nearby Disney or on, Disney Springs, places like that, that people can find near them at home. So I just feel like when you're at Disney, try to branch out. Pick something that maybe you cannot
Great.
find near home or isn't a chain restaurant or isn't, um, a fast food restaurant, that when you could pick something for the same price point that maybe would be something different when you go to Disney. So I get that sometimes budget is a concern and maybe those are the best budget friendly options that you might need at that moment, but trying to find something a little bit different I think can be fun.
Yeah, especially at Disney. There's so many options at Disney World that I don't think you'd need to eat at a chain restaurant unless you just really need your fix of something, I guess. But I know, I agree. I think that's a great tip.
This one I feel like I even forget to do sometimes on my trips. And that is forgetting to check for things like special events and refurbs happening at the parks during your trip. So things like cheer events or Run Disney weeks or holiday parties. That one's pretty obvious. I feel like we have mentioned that a lot. But ride refurbs, like I know the Skyliner is getting ready to be refurbed in January, so there's
They
going
did
to
not
be a
announce
big
that soon enough. Just saying. Not that I'm bitter or anything.
not bitter
Just
at all.
saying.
So things like that, you just want to make sure that you are searching online. There are a bunch of places that will post the refurb schedule. If you can't find it on the Disney website, it's not always easy to find on the Disney website. They don't have a nice little list like we would like them to. So finding somewhere that has compiled that, often Chip and Co will have it, posted in an article on their website. The cheer events and some of the dance events are harder to find. You just kind of have to search around and know what time of year they typically come. Same with the Run Disney is pretty easy to find on their website, but just searching around, seeing if there's anything you need to know about before you go. Dapper Day is one that I know a lot of people don't think about too. We just had that conversation because it's coming up in about a month. They're doing Dapper Day. So just things like that you may need to take note of.
Yeah, and I will make a little plug for touring plans as well, that we're not sponsored by them or anything, but I do love that on their crowd calendar, they do list a lot of events that are happening that weekend, or if it's a holiday weekend or like things that they anticipate the crowds being higher for. They have a lot of that compiled there. So I find that super helpful when I'm planning. But yeah, I mean, don't stop going just because these things are happening necessarily. Like, don't make it but just be aware that it might, Run Disney sometimes affects traffic flow, or, like there might be a lot of people just that 1 or 2 days around that event that are in the parks. And yeah. And then, yeah, people are commenting about the Skyliner, like, oh my gosh, the Skyliner's going down almost every single year in January, about the third week of January to almost the end of January. A portion of it or the whole thing is down for refurbishment, like clockwork. It happens every year, and I'm always surprised by it. Every year.
Even though it happens, you're here preaching to us. It happens every year, and you're like, yeah, they didn't announce that early enough. Wait a minute,
right? We're being honest about the mistakes we've made. I'm one of these people.
Yes, we are.
So I will say though, sometimes those resorts are a little bit cheaper during that refurb week, because people don't want to stay there and they have to fill them anyway.
Right.
So just keeping that out there. Shall we move on to our next one?
Honestly, I'll say just briefly, things like that, like Kate said, shouldn't stop you from going. You may need to just plan accordingly and just realize that if you're at a Skyliner resort and you don't have the Skyliner as an option, you're gonna have to wait for a bus. So is everyone else.
Yeah.
So just keep it in mind.
The buses. Oh, the buses.
Where's Elliot's Lyft gift card when you need it on this trip?
Right? Love my husband that he gives that for me. Anyway, all right, let's move on to one that I think that is a big mistake that a lot of people make, and we say it over and over again because we're just going to keep saying it out there until everybody hears it. That people wear brand new shoes to Disney without breaking them in, or think they have broken them in, but they're not broken in for, the 10 to 14 miles of walking you do during the day. So don't wear brand new shoes to Disney. Wear comfortable shoes to Disney. Don't wear things just because they're cute, unless you just want to wear them for photos and put them in a locker and change your shoes. Or if you're not going for very long, you're just going to pop in for an hour, by all means, wear the cute shoes. But just do your feet and back and everything else a favor, your knees a favor. Yes. Wear good quality shoes.
Yes. And make sure that you have broken them in too. I know some of you may be like, well, I know this brand of shoe. I don't, they're good to go. Okay, that's fine. You've clearly done your research with that. But don't buy a pair of shoes and take them brand new in box to Disney. Please just don't do it.
I'll break them in at Disney.
No.
Yeah. No. And along the same...
then your feet will immediately be sad and you have your entire week ahead of you.
Yeah. And along those lines, another mistake that I have made in the past is not bringing two pairs of shoes to alternate. Like when your feet get tired of one pair, or maybe something's rubbing a lot on your heel or the side of your foot, if you have a different pair of shoes to wear the next day, then you can kind of stave off a lot of those blisters or like sore spots on your foot, because it'll rub in a different place. And then you can switch back. So having the two pairs to like alternate really does help an awful lot to keeping your feet happy.
Or if they get wet and they haven't dried. Because I've had that happen where they've gotten wet and I left them out to dry overnight and they were not dry in the morning.
Yeah, that's happened with my kids' shoes because they want to splash in all the puddles and everything at Disney when it rains. And then we've just like slowly just switching everybody to Crocs because it's just easier.
Kirk is over here saying, oh, right. Yeah, wet shoes, wear Crocs. And Stevie made a good point. She said that she changes them during her midday break, too. So that's another option that you have for sure. But I've made that mistake with my kids, too, not thinking about, especially recently, because they're at the age where they want to walk more than be in the stroller, but we still have the stroller because they're not completely ready to be done with it. So I don't always think about their walking shoes because I don't always anticipate how much they're going to walk. I have learned my lesson with that, but make sure that you are also thinking about your kids having 2 to 3 pairs of shoes with them as well.
No, that's a good one. And Erin's saying resort hair dryer for wet shoes is a good option. I have tried that. We tried that in Paris because we had wet shoes and okay, we were talking about mistakes. Make sure when you go to the airport for your month-long vacation that your child is not wearing snow boots from last season in the car. Oops. I'm like, what? Because I was anticipating her wearing her like tennis shoes to the airport, and then her spare shoes were in her. I was like, so she only ended up having one pair of shoes because she wore her snow boots into the car. We were not paying attention. Or I was like, I got to the airport. I was like, what are you wearing? What are you wearing on your foot? I was like, it's okay. We have another pair of shoes. It's okay.
It's okay. We're going to be fine.
Good times. Motherhood. So anyway, shall we move on to other mistakes?
Yes, we shall. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about kind of what to do before. So let's do a couple maybe that have to do with things during your trip. As far as that goes, one of the big ones that I feel like people maybe overlook or don't look enough into is they make the mistake of skipping the free virtual queues that Disney has to offer. It doesn't make sense to me unless you know that you're not going to ride it. Obviously, that's a different story. But if you're someone that wants to ride Cosmic Rewind or wants to ride Tron at Disney World, why are we skipping Why are we skipping the virtual queue? They're
I think some
free.
people forget. Just they forget or they don't know. I think that's usually why. But I agree. Don't skip your free virtual queues. It's like a free lightning lane ish.
Literally.
Not really, because sometimes you have to wait a little bit longer. But
Right.
sometimes it's the only way you can ride on those brand new attractions that come out. Right now it's Cosmic and Tron and whatnot, but it'll be other rides probably in the future when they release new rides. So just check and see what virtual queues are available whenever you're going. And yeah, World of Color for Disneyland. I feel like so many people miss that. It happens every day at noon. You can be in, if you have a park hopper, you don't have to be in DCA. You do have to be past a gate to get into it, but you can be in Disneyland or you can be in DCA at noon. Get your World of Color ones. It'll just get you into a section where you have a decent view. So, but it's free. So do it.
But I think the issue is that people are like, oh, I'm not going to use Genie Plus, so I don't need to wake up at 7 a.m. No, wake up and just literally set an alarm for 6:58. Wake up, get your virtual queue, go back to bed.
Go back to sleep. Yeah, unless you get that early boarding group, that's always the worst. You're like, you want to go back to sleep. And it's like, boarding group 10. And you're like, no, never mind. Like, okay.
Or
everybody else.
Plan to make sure that you're in the park for the 1 p.m. Like, if you don't want to do 7 a.m., plan for 1 p.m. if you know you're going to be there.
Yeah. No, that's good.
Just do it.
Get your virtual queues. Even if you might not use it, just go get it. I mean, obviously you have to be planning to go to that park to use it. But like,
right.
If you're like, I probably will do this or I might do this, just have the option to do it. Go get your virtual queues. Yeah.
Yes.
Alrighty. Enough of the virtual queue soapbox. Let's another mistake that people make is they don't check the My Disney Experience or Disneyland app out before their trip to see all the features that it has. Now, with a caveat that there's a lot of features on there that you probably won't need to access during your trip, or that maybe you're just for fun. But there's a whole lot of things on there that are actually very, very helpful. There's news items. There's, the opening dates for the opening times for the parks. There's lots of things that you're going to need to know and get comfortable with before you go so that you're aware of where everything is and you're not spending all that time in the park staring at your phone trying to figure out what to do. So,
or relying on someone else in your party hoping that maybe they know. There's so much, especially on those apps that you can use in the parks to make it so much easier. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of them later, but just even wait times. And so you're not walking around looking for the signs that they have, because they're very limited in their locations where they have the signs with the wait times. Just have the app, pull it out of your pocket. It's so much easier than having to walk across the park and figure out what the wait times are by looking at the signs.
Yeah, and I would say, I know there's a lot of people that are angry that they have to use so much technology on their trips or that they don't like looking at their phones and stuff. And I get that. I know that that's frustrating when you just want to kind of disconnect from the world. I totally get that. But I will say there's a lot of things on there that are helpful, just like bathroom locations, locations of like fuel rod charging stations, first aid, baby care. Like they'll give you lots of options. Show times for virtually everything. It really is a lot. Also food and all the menus. So like we like to look when we're standing in line, we'll pull up the menu from where we're going to eat and we'll decide what we want to eat while we're doing our mobile order. Like it just is so much more helpful to be proficient in the language of those apps because it makes your trip a little easier. And then you become an addict like us that are at home but check the wait times, which is weird, but that's what we do. Fine. Speaking of kind of doing your research in advance, I think you also need to, do you want to talk about this one?
Sorry. Yes. Please make sure you do at least some research on Genie Plus if you're planning on using it now. If you're going in and you're like, nope, we're not using it. We're just going to wait standby because we only have a short list of things we want to do. Okay, that's totally fine. But if you're planning on using Genie Plus, please just do just 20 minutes of research. Just read a couple blogs, listen to our podcast on Genie Plus. We did an entire episode on Genie Plus. Just to familiarize yourself, even just like what Kate was mentioning with the language around the whole system. knowing what a lightning lane is, knowing what an individual lane is, your tip board, wait times, all of that, just being aware of the language itself and just having at least a basic knowledge of how it works is super helpful to your trip.
This is a mistake we see people making all the time with their trips. I see people at Disney making mistakes that they walk up and they're like, I don't know what this line is for. What is this? How do I do this? And like they're asking the cast member at the like entrance of the lightning lane. I'm like, oh no. Like I feel for all the cast
family message me. I have literally had family message me, hey, we're in Magic Kingdom today. How do I work Genie Plus?
Oh no.
And I'm like, oh, and it's like 10 a.m. And I'm like,
well,
okay, well, yes. And I think that instance, I was like, can you just give me your login? I will make it work.
Like, it's easier than explaining it. It's, we will say that it's a lot. It's a lot of information. There's a lot of nuance to it. There's a lot of strategy to it. It's not a simple thing to do. I wish it was. I think we all wish it was, but it's not. And that's okay. Like, because we can learn. It's your chance to get to educate yourself about Genie Plus. Oh no. Aaron said he booked his daughter a lightning lane for a completely different time than the rest of us, which I guess is another mistake that you can make within Genie Plus, is if you don't assign all of your party together when you book it, you could end up.
I could talk for 2 hours on mistakes that people make just on Genie Plus.
We should make that another episode, I think, because
maybe we should. Maybe I should add that to our list, because I feel like I have a lot of experience with mistakes that people make on Genie Plus. So I think you're right. We may need to add that to a future date for an episode.
Yeah. And I would say that if you do make a mistake like that, when you book somebody, you forget to book somebody with your party, go visit guest relations and tell them what happened. They know that this stuff happens. Obviously, don't abuse that. But if it's an honest mistake that you made, usually they can make it right, depending on what it is. But just go visit guest services.
Or if you're having issues in the park linking family members together or any of that, just that's what they're there for. Just go ask for help. Don't try to figure it out on your own. It's too much. If you don't know what you're doing, it's too much.
Yeah. And so, yeah, at this point in the podcast, I do want to say there's a lot. This is a lot of things. We're only partially way through this list. We're going to keep moving through it. But I will say because we see either we have made these mistakes or we've seen other people make these mistakes often. So that's why we really want to do this episode, because we don't want this for you guys. We're like, go in knowing, have the knowledge and the power to do it well. So on that note, shall we move on to our next one here?
Yes.
We talked about Genie Plus. Let's talk about make sure that you plan enough park days, because that's a mistake people make, is they think they will get more done in a day than they will. And they don't plan enough days to see everything they want to see. Now, with the caveat that you're probably not going to get to everything, and that's okay. So don't put that pressure on yourself. That's a mistake I think we also make, especially those of us out there who maybe type A planner type things, and we're like, oh, I didn't check everything off my list. I didn't get to everything that we'd hoped for. Take a deep breath and recognize that that's okay. That you're not going to see everything. And unless you're spending solid 2 weeks at Walt Disney World or a solid week and a half at Disneyland, you're probably not going to get to everything. You're going to get to what you want to see. And that's the goal.
Yes.
So do you want to add a little bit to that, Jackie? Do you have anything?
Yeah. And I think just also, again, we talked about making those priority lists. If you look at your list for Magic Kingdom is the prime example. If you look at your list for Magic Kingdom and you've got 10 must-do rides on there, you may want to consider a park hopper or adding another day at Magic Kingdom. We talked about visiting during the holiday season, making sure you have enough days planned if you're visiting when it's going to be super busy when you're going. Just taking everything into consideration, making sure you have enough time to get everything done that is on your must-do list, and then you can go from there. So speaking of making those lists and those priorities, we often see people making the mistake of not doing the big e-ticket or your top priority rides at the beginning of your day or subsequently at the end of your day if you've got a couple e-tickets that you want to get done and you're not necessarily going to be using Genie Plus, or you've got other plans, or, depending on your day. But I think it's so important to think about those big rides with those super long lines, bookending your day with those and doing it at the very beginning, doing it at the very end, planning on getting in line right at park close, whatever works for your group, but having a plan for those and not trying to do them at 1 p.m.
Yeah, that's super smart. I don't have anything to add to that. Just BS. So one mistake that I've seen a lot of parents make, only because they don't know that it exists, is not using Rider Switch or Baby Swap, depending on what you want to call it. But this is a service, a free service that Disney provides, that is the ability for you to send an adult, if you have a child or somebody who can't ride a big attraction, send one adult through the line. And then when they come out, the other person can go, I think it's up to 3 people with them, and then go through the line without, like, they go basically in the lightning lane. So they get to skip a lot of the wait. So you don't have to wait twice if you have, say, a baby or a small child that can't go on a roller coaster. So Disney only makes you wait one time, and you can bring other people with you so you don't have to ride alone just because you were the one that stayed out with the kiddo, right? Which I think is a wonderful service. So we've talked about this before and we won't go into huge detail about it, but I will say, to use this service, go bring your child with you or the person with you and say, hey, can we use Rider Switch? And then ask the cast member who's at the beginning of the attraction, and they'll tell you where to go, what to do, what to hand you to do it. They'll figure that out for you. So,
and Stevie does bring up a good point. Depending on the attraction will depend on whether or not that is an available service that they have. So something with a height requirement definitely has the ability to do rider swap. She asked about something like Peter Pan. I have seen where if rides are dark and you've got a kiddo that's afraid of the dark, they will honor that for you. So just talk to the cast member at the entrance, and they'll be able to let you know what they can do. And they set that up for you right before you even get in line. So don't get in line first. Talk to the cast member first. That way they can set you up with that depending on your particular situation.
Yeah. And usually they will, usually they need to kind of see the child that is with you or the person that's with you, the reason why you have to do the switch, so have them with you when you do that. But it is generally the e-ticket, the big rides, the roller coasters, the ones that like have a height restriction. I agree.
So let's talk a little bit about food. Our next couple ones are all about food planning. So a mistake that we see families often making is they're not planning out at least a little bit of their food options. They're leaving it till the last minute, and they're just hangry, walking around trying to figure out what in the world we're going to eat. Where are we? What's near us? What's going to work for us? That could also apply to bringing food or snacks in with you. So if you are hangry, you can help that in the moment. But then we also talk about using mobile order as well. That all kind of gets wrapped into one, because I feel like it's all super important to have an idea of a couple places that you might like to eat depending on where you are at the park, and being able to navigate that mobile order on your My Disney Experience app or your Disneyland app to be able to expedite that process for your group.
Yeah, and I will say, not just snacks for the kids. You might have adults in your party who with experience get hangry and who may need said snack. So, have one in your bag just in case.
Yep, absolutely. And also kind of in relation to that, eating breakfast before you go into the parks or planning late morning brunch. We've talked about eating during non-peak hours, things like that. So you don't miss those morning hours that we've talked about, how crucial those are to being able to get your list done. And also planning where you want to eat, like I mentioned, to make sure that it's close to where you are. So having 2 or 3 different options to make sure that you're not hangry going across the park, grumpy because you're taking all those extra steps to get across the park to where you want to eat. Just avoid it all by having plan ABC.
Yeah. Like I'd be happy eating at this place, or this place. Which one's
Mm.
closest to us right now? That helps an awful lot. It's just the worst when you're all hungry, but you have to hike all the way across the park to get to your food. Like that's a long walk. Just saying.
Yes. Yes. And it's funny because like my husband and I literally just did this. We were trying to think about food options for when we're in Magic Kingdom. And we're like, well, we know that we've got this option, and this option. So wherever we are, that's going to be where we choose because it's, just trying to figure out like, okay, I don't know where we're going to be in the park and when we're going to be hungry. So we'll just make a couple plans.
That's so smart. On the same idea of food here, we have a mistake people make is, this was actually from my husband, so kudos to him for remembering this one. Ordering full meals for everyone, including kids. I feel like every time we go on a Disney trip, the very first meal we sit down to, because we're so used to doing it everywhere else, we order a meal for everybody. Every kid gets a meal, every adult gets a meal. And we quickly remember at Disney, oh, right, our kids can't finish all of this food, especially if it's hot outside. Like they tend to just eat less in general. And sometimes we don't feel like eating as much either. So we've now learned that sometimes Elliot and I will split a meal and then get a dessert to share or an appetizer to share. And often our girls can share a kid's meal between them. And then my son gets a full meal as well. Like, your kids and how much they can eat. But sometimes they might eat even less sometimes at Disney because they're hot or tired or whatever. So you can always maybe get more food, especially at a quick service, unless it's one that you had to book way out and then, just plan ahead. But I would say, get a smaller amount of food than a meal for everybody and then see how much you eat. And if you're still hungry, you could maybe go get a dessert or a little snack or something just to fill in the gaps, because then you're not wasting money on things that nobody's eating.
And the majority of the parks, you're going to be able to fairly easily find something else to eat. If 20 minutes after dinner, your kiddo is complaining about being hungry, you're probably going to be able to find them something fairly quickly at the majority of the parks. So
this is where popcorn comes in clutch, right?
Yes.
Mickey bars and popcorn. You're at Disney.
Absolutely. Yeah. Or pretzels if you're me, because I will eat a Mickey pretzel any day.
Mm-hmm. Do you eat plastic cheese? I can't remember.
Sometimes.
Okay.
Sometimes. Depends on my mood.
It's like a love or hate it kind of thing for the plastic cheese. So.
Yeah, I don't mind it. My husband always judges me when I'm like, no, I don't want cheese. And he's like, what? I'm like,
I love that face you just made.
He's just, I'm not a sauce person in general. And like in that regards, when you eat a pretzel, I feel like the cheese is kind of the sauce that goes with it. It's not crucial to the snack, in my personal opinion.
Interesting.
So I'm not a sauce person. I know. I'm also very, very picky. So that also.
Yes. You know that about you.
So.
It's true.
Yes. Anyway, enough about my eating habits. Let's go back to the next mistake that we see families making when they are visiting Disney is not planning or anticipating a break when your party needs one. So this could apply to little kids that need a nap break in the afternoon. This could apply to bigger kids that just need some time to chill out and not be walking or waiting or standing. This could apply to the adults in your party that cannot go all day in the parks, and that's totally fine. It is what it is. But pushing your family to do one more ride when everyone is just done is just not worth it. Save it till you come back. Take your nap first. You will be much better off doing that one last ride when you come back.
And I feel like this does apply also to shows and stuff. If your kids are really exhausted and you want to like, oh, well, we got to go see Fantasmic. We got to go see something. I feel like this is a mistake I made as a mom. My son was tired and we were at Disneyland where you have to stand for Fantasmic. They make you stand up. Mm-hmm. He could not stand up. He was exhausted. And so he hates Fantasmic. He hates it. He doesn't ever want to see it again because his memory is of like cast members like yelling at everybody to stand up when he was tired. And I'm like, well, that's a bummer, you
Aw.
know, like that he has that memory. Not that they
Yeah.
were yelling directly at him, you know, but it's just like everybody's
Right,
like, you have to
right.
get up, you have to get up. And he's like, I don't want to get up. I'm tired. I don't want to be here. And I felt awful afterwards. I'm like, "Ugh, I should have just like let him go and maybe do something else, you know, with one of us could have gone with him and done something else or sat down or just gone back early. So don't push your kids when they're exhausted because their memories of that are not going to be magical. I'll just say that. They might be something else.
Yeah, I mean, my daughter slept through Harmonious in the stroller. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
it happens. And she was fine up until like the show started. And then I looked over and she was asleep. And I was like, okay.
Yeah. That's what happened to almost all my kids when they were little for those shows. They're just tired by the end of the day and
Yeah.
they're done. And if they can sleep in the stroller, then let them sleep. You know, don't wake them up. Just let them.
Right.
That's
Nope.
that's okay. I'll also say advocate for yourself, not just your kids too. Well, if you're really tired and you've reached the end of what you're capable of and you need a nap or a break or to call it a day, just don't say like, oh, but I didn't get to this and this and this and this. Just say, look at all the wonderful things I did today. And now I'm going to go rest and enjoy rest. And I think it's giving ourselves permission to not do it all and to just go rest. I walked out of Disneyland like right as the shows were starting. All the fireworks shows were starting. And I was like, I'm tired. I'm not, I don't, I feel like I should stay and watch this show, but I want to leave because I'm exhausted. And it's okay to do that. Nobody's saying you have to stay.
Absolutely. No.
Just saying.
And I've got several people over here advocating for adult nap time at Disney when you go. And I agree. Even when my husband and I used to go before we had kids, we always took an afternoon break from like 2 to 4 or 5 because it was like, we're tired and we want to stay up and stay till the end because we knew that we wanted to see fireworks or the park was open until midnight or whatever it was. And it was like, I'm going to need a nap. If we're gonna do that.
There's no shame in the nap. Naps are great.
No.
Naps, you get like
Wonderful.
gold star if you go take a break and take a nap. For me, I'll give you a gold star. Yeah, and Erin's saying I'm bad at pushing myself and others if we don't have a predetermined break time. Right. So having that pre-planned, like we're going to take a break at 2 p.m., 1 p.m., 3 p.m., whatever it is for you. To say this is the time we're headed back to the hotel. Like, I'm always guilty of pushing it back. I'm like, oh, but we'll do 3:30. It's no, just go for your break, and then you can come back.
Yep.
Just saying.
Yep.
Anyway, enough about break time. Shall we move on to our next one?
Yes, I think we should.
So
Okay.
this is a mistake so many people make because they just underestimate how long it takes to get places. So a mistake they make is not giving yourself enough time to get to your Disney destination via Disney transportation or even driving, but especially Disney transportation. I say I give it the 90-minute rule, and people think that some people have told me like that's a little extreme. I was like, like 1 hour. Usually you can get almost anywhere in an hour, usually, but sometimes there's extenuating circumstances where you have to wait for 2 or 3 buses or something breaks down or something happens and you end up having to go with plan B, and you just give yourself 90 minutes to get to wherever you need to go on Disney property. This is Disney World specifically. Disneyland, obviously not.
Yes.
Disneyland, I'm like 5 minutes to walk there, I'm good. But Disney World, give yourself a lot of time because it takes way more time than you think it does to get anywhere, especially if it's crowded at any given time of the day.
Yes. Yeah, and we were totally guilty of this my son's first trip because it was our first trip with kids and thinking about that afternoon nap. You know, we'd always taken a break, but it was never on a schedule. It didn't really matter. And it was one of those things where we got to like a little bit before his nap time and it was like, okay, let's go back. But it was like we got to the room an hour after his nap time should have started. And it was just like,
oh, yeah, it was falling apart.
Okay, tomorrow we're going to do this differently.
Yeah. It's really easy to be late, especially
push everything back for the rest of the night. It's like, well, you know, it is what it is.
Yeah, and you adapt and stuff. But I mean, it's
right.
If you have a dining reservation you have to get to, like, leave time to get to that. If you have a specific show you need to see at a specific time, leave extra time for that because you're going to get there and it's going to be really crowded. You know, just it takes way more time than you think it needs to get anywhere. And just put that in your brain and then just plan accordingly. And then you won't be also frustrated when it does take a long time to get somewhere. You'll maybe be early, which will be great.
Yay! Hooray! You'll be pleasantly surprised when you arrive on time or early.
Yes.
Okay, so moving on to, gosh, we are on number 21 already. And I'll take this one, Kate, so you don't have to with your recent experience.
Still traumatized.
Kind of hopping back to before your trip, just don't forget to make your final payment on your Disney vacation, no matter what you're going to do, whether you're doing a Disneyland, Disney World, Disneyland Paris. Just don't forget
hypothetically
to make that final payment, because Disney will cancel your reservation.
Yeah,
And
the last
one of us knows that from experience.
And don't depend on Disney to email you and remind you about your payments, because it might go to your spam folder and you might not see it. And you might be very sad.
Yes.
And you might pay for a very, very expensive last-minute reservation.
All hypothetical, of course.
Oh, very hypothetical.
And I will just mention that if you have a package booked, it is for Disney World and Land, I think both 30 days out.
I think so.
That you have to pay your total amount due. If you have a room-only reservation, that is due at check-in. And that one is a little more lenient because they just charge it to whatever card you have on file.
Make your payment. Write on your calendar. Set a reminder. Don't forget. Anyway,
Moving on.
I will say a mistake that I have made personally is staying at a deluxe resort at Disney specifically, but not scheduling enough downtime to really enjoy that resort. So we've stayed at Riviera, we've stayed at the Grand Floridian, we've stayed at Animal Kingdom Lodge. Oh gosh, the Polynesian. Like, we've stayed at a lot of these wonderful resorts, usually because we rent DVC points, and that makes them half price because I can't afford full price for any of those. But we've made the mistake of not having any time to really enjoy it. The pool, the atmosphere, the events. A lot of these resorts have events that happen throughout the day. They have special things that you can go to. Just enjoying the atmosphere, the food. Like Animal Kingdom Lodge is some of the best food on property. But if all of your plans are out at the parks, you miss out on really enjoying that resort. So plan, if you have a day in the middle of your trip that you can plan to just be a resort day and just relax and enjoy it. That's my recommendation for that.
Yeah. And honestly, that's the reason why we typically stay at the value resorts, because we just prefer to not do that. If I'm being completely honest, we prefer to be in the parks. So I don't need to stay at a deluxe resort because I'm not going to take advantage of all the amenities and activities and things that they have. So keeping all of that in mind.
Yes.
Also making just smart decisions about where you want to stay.
Yeah. And I will say that if you just need like a really clean and updated and nice, like just a place to shower and like sleep, like some of those value resorts, now that they've been renovated, are actually decent options, especially Pop Century, because it's right there on the Skylighter line. The theming at the resort makes I can't, but the rooms themselves are great. So I will just say that's a really great option for you to, if you want to save money, but you still want to have a really nice room to stay in, and you're not going to be there that much. I wouldn't necessarily recommend a deluxe resort if you were not planning to be in it at all, because even Animal Kingdom Lodge is such a cool experience, but you got to be in your resort to enjoy it. So, but yeah, I will say waking up to giraffes outside your window is one of the coolest things we've ever done as a family.
I mean, yeah. That's pretty neat.
It's great. It's pretty great.
Yes. All right. Moving on. Our next item on our list of mistakes that we see families make at Disney is not having a general plan for the day and then expecting to get a lot done. So we touched on this a little bit earlier about having your priority list and, not being stuck in the what do you want to do? What do you want to do? I don't know type of thing. But expecting to get a lot done when you don't have that can lead to some frustrated people in your travel party. And being spontaneous is fine, but you need to be realistic about the spontaneity of your trip if that's what you're choosing to do, because it could mean a lot more waiting. It could mean a lot less of your list that you are going to accomplish. So just knowing how you want to work all of that going into it is such a big help.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it's I overhear a lot of things, not because I'm trying to be, but when I travel solo, I hear a lot of things that are around me. Okay. Like I don't have anything else to listen to. I'm listening to the Disney music and stuff, but like I'm hearing people talk around me because you just do. And I hear so many people that are like yelling at members of their families and like every line is 60 minutes. And oh my gosh, like they're so mad that everything is such a long wait. And I'm like, that's a family that didn't probably have a plan, that doesn't know how to use Genie Plus. And I hear it so often and it breaks my heart because I'm like, if you have a plan and or you know how to use Genie Plus or a combination of those two, you won't run into that situation where you're waiting 60 minutes for every ride. You just won't. But that's what happens when you don't know what you're doing and then you go into the situation and then you're angry about it. And it just makes for a really sad trip experience. I was like, that could have been easily avoided. Just a little bit of planning, just a little minuscule amount of planning. So
just a tiny little bit. Well, and you made a good point in our notes here being cautious about over planning too. You have to find that happy medium between planning enough and not over planning. And that can be tricky to do. But I think that's why we've talked about that priority list. It's so important to get the top priority from everyone. And the way that my family does it is, so like we have like 3 tiers of our list kind of that we make, because I feel like, again, it's managing those expectations so that people know what is going to happen in your day.
Yeah. And I think that it's for those of us who love to plan and who have, a year to plan our Disney vacation, sometimes we want to schedule everything almost down to the minute of like, here's where we'll do everything, and it can feel very frustrating when you get off of your schedule or you're not like, you haven't accomplished as much as you had hoped to. And it's like, just remember, it's supposed to be a vacation. I know that Disney's a lot of planning and it's a lot to put together and you really feel accomplished when you have that plan in place, but it's okay to take those extra moments for, spontaneous re-rides of rides that people just really loved and want to go on again, or some unexpected magic with some character sightings or a cavalcade that comes by. Take a deep breath and be like, this is what Disney is all about. It's not about the moments that you plan, but the moments to just kind of happen that are magical.
Mm-hmm.
So keep that in mind as you go, that planning is important, but it's not everything. It doesn't make or break your vacation necessarily.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. And I think that perfectly segues into the next point, if you want to take that one for us, Kate, because I think you've done a lovely job of explaining all of this.
Yeah, we kind of touched on it earlier too, where try not to do everything, and I think our friend Kirk from Walrus Carp, I was with him and his lovely wife in Disneyland, and I'm the inner park nerd in me, the Disney historian in me was just like, no, but you didn't see this, and you didn't see this, and you didn't see this, and he's like, that's something for next time. And I was like, gosh, that's such a healthy perspective. It's like, we have to think about it that way more often. Of course, I just want him to see everything because he's my friend. And I was like, you should see all these amazing things. But truthfully, try not to do everything. There's going to be things that you don't get to, and that's okay. It'll give you a reason to come back. Or maybe it's just you just weren't meant to get to those things, and that's okay too. Just focus on what you did do that you loved as a family, and that's enough.
I think our next one kind of goes hand in hand with that a little bit, because I feel like when you've got that list and you want to be someone who is a box checker, like Kate and I both are, families that don't, we're working on it. Okay. But families that don't take advantage of those early morning hours, we see that happen a lot. And this is something that if you have listened to Mom Street, you have heard us talk about probably 50 times, but lower crowds in the morning make it so much easier to accomplish the things that are on your list. And Kate made a good point too in our notes here that the weather is typically better in the early morning. If you're expecting it to be, 95 in the Florida heat, if you can get some rides in before 10 a.m., you're going to have the best weather before it gets to be blazing hot. So having the ability to run through quite a few rides before the parks get really, really crazy is so crucial. And so many families miss out on that.
Yeah, and it's hard. It's hard to get everybody up super early in the morning.
Yes.
Like my Disney mornings, I'm up at like 5:30 in the morning. And I'm not a morning person, but I get myself out of bed and I get myself ready, and then you get all your kids ready. Like I usually wake up my kids after I'm almost all the way ready, so I can just help them get ready.
Same.
But so we can get out the door. And also, you can focus on getting yourself ready because it's impossible when everybody's like, "Where's my socks?" But
and you're all in the room all together because, like, you're used to, in your house, everyone has their own space. You don't always have that when you stay at a Disney resort. So
no, it's always like I'm glad that Disney, a lot of their rooms, even the values and moderates, have like at least sliding doors or curtains that will block off the bathroom, so you can try to like be in that vanity space getting ready. I think that's really helpful. Yes. But I will say, this is a big pet peeve of mine, and it's okay. I want to say it's okay that if you are one of these people that this is what you do at Disney, then great. That's good for you. And that's what you want to do at Disney, do it. And don't take this as a criticism, please. But one of my biggest pet peeves is people that wake up early to go to like the magic hours, the extra resort magic time in the morning, and then they don't go on the rides that are open. And instead they stand in line at Starbucks. And I'm like, what are you doing with your life? Like, why did you wake up early? And I get it. I used to work in coffee. I worked at Seattle's Best in Seattle and Starbucks. I understand the coffee fix. I understand it. I get it. However, that time is so critical. You can get so many rides done that you would have to wait hours for later in the day. It is not the time to stand in line. Now, when the crowds come in at like 10:30, they all start coming in, and if all the wait times go up, then go get your coffee, because then people are not waiting in line as much there. You can have a really wonderful mid-morning coffee, relax, sit down at a table, and know you're not missing out on a thing because the lines have gotten really long. So yes, don't rope drop coffee. Off my soapbox now.
Something that we have done.
My Starbucks.
In your Starbucks mug.
I just realized how ironic that is. I'm drinking out of a Starbucks mug, as I just said. Don't.
I love that. Something that we have done at Magic Kingdom that was helpful is we were rope dropping Seven Dwarfs, and while we were in line, once we knew kind of when we were going to get off the ride, we mobile ordered. They have a cold brew at Friar's Nook, so we mobile ordered it while we were in line. And then swung by, picked it up, and walked right to our next thing. So we didn't have to wait in line. If you don't need an option that Starbucks offer, now I understand there are allergies and preferences and things like that maybe Starbucks has that nowhere else in the park has. However, if you are someone that can get coffee at an alternate location, keep that in mind that there are lots of other alternate locations where you can get coffee. You don't have to go to Main Street Starbucks.
Yeah. And I don't necessarily advocate for coffee in your room, but I'll say, like, if you just need coffee, like, have some coffee in your room and then get some mid-morning. If you want like a nicer one, I would do that. And yes, there are a lot of other options of places to get coffee as well. So that's a great point.
We usually do Starbucks when we're coming back in from our afternoon break for our evening. And we'll hit it then, and we'll just do like a Joffrey's or coffee from the room or whatever in the morning. So there's lots of options. Just don't rope drop Starbucks or you'll make Kate's eye twitch.
That's what you want to do with your... Go ahead. Done. Okay. Anyway.
This is something that we've talked about, and this is something that we actually have a lovely guide that can help you with not paying for water in the parks. There are tons of places in every park that you can get free water, or bringing your own water bottle, you can refill it with lots and lots of different options. If you need a map, we have those available on our Instagram page. in one of our highlight reels saved for you all to be able to screenshot and have to access those park maps with the water locations on them. Paying for water, just don't do it. You really don't need to. But also along with that, don't forget to drink the water that you have in the parks. That is also very crucial to survival in your Disney trip. You need more water than you think you do. Drink more than you ever would at any other place. That's how I do Disney. I drink way more water at Disney than anywhere else.
Yeah, me too. That's a wise way to think of it. And yeah, so a lot of people are like, oh, but I don't want like fountain water and stuff. Well, we put on those guides specifically places where you can go and get like fountain, not water fountain, but like the fountain drinks like sodas and stuff. They have the water tab on there where it's really ice cold and wonderful and filtered, which is important for both LA and Florida. It's better tasting. So we do have those options on there so that you can refill your water bottle in a place that gives you water you actually want to drink. And I will say,
yes,
that this was something when I traveled with somebody in the parks and they just insisted on buying bottled water every single time. And I was like keeping like a mental tab of like how much that cost. And I was like, it was like almost $100 by the end of the day. And I was like on water bottles. And I was like,
crazy.
What? And, it clearly wasn't a big deal to them. So if your financial situation, you just want to get a cold bottle of water, you do you. But I probably wouldn't spend my money on that when I could spend it on a lot of other things. So just saying.
And I do know of people that maybe would purchase one at the beginning of their day and then refill that water bottle. I get it. Like if you forget yours at home and you want to have one to be able to carry around with you, then buy one at the beginning of the day, but don't continue to buy it after that. You can just refill that bottle that you bought at 8 a.m. and you'll be perfectly okay. I promise.
Yes. Next up, mistakes that families make at Disney. One is going open to close multiple days without rest. This is a mistake that I have made. I have since learned to balance myself a little bit better. And I will say, we've mentioned this before, but day 3 is always the hardest day of your trip. I don't know what it is about day 3. Day 1, you have all the excitement, energy, adrenaline. You're ready to go. You're excited. Day 2, you start to get a little bit tired, but you're still like excited to be there. Day 3, it's like everybody's just like done. Everybody is crabbier. Everybody's tired. Everything hurts.
Yep.
Like you're just like, you're exhausted. So know that day 3 is coming. Either plan a rest day or a sleep in morning or something that makes it more restful for you, knowing that that day is going to be harder because you're really, really, really exhausted. Because your body's probably, unless you're like a marathoner, you're probably not used to doing 10 to 14 miles a day, or at least everybody in your party isn't, I don't know. And out in the sun and with the crowds and with the maybe food you're not used to eating. It's just hard on your body. Even if sometimes I just take a break when I'm in the parks and I'll just like find a place to kind of rest and sit down for a long time in the AC. And, just an hour of sitting down feels like an hour in my resort if I don't feel like going all the way back to my resort. But yes, just be careful. Be conscious of what your body's telling you, because that's still important, even if you're on vacation. So
yes,
that's all.
Yes. And even if you are an adult visiting the parks without kids and you don't think you need to take a nap, you still may need a break.
That's fine.
Something that is very important and actually ties into the conversation we were having about hair before we started recording our podcast today.
Kirk said wasn't relevant. Excuse me.
But here we are. We want to caution families to not forget hair ties, hair clips, hair brushes, things that you need in the parks, especially because you may want to wear your hair down and the weather may be nice to wear your hair down, but then you go to get on Cosmic Rewind and your hair will end up covering your entire face.
So true.
So even if you have them with you, take them into the park with you. Make sure you have at least one. Throw it on your wrist. I always have one on my wrist. Throw it in your park bag. Whatever you need to do, have one with you at all times.
Yeah, I mean, the both in Disneyland and Disney World, humidity has happened to my hair where suddenly it's like Monica Geller when she's like, her hair is like out to here. I don't know if anybody gets that Friends reference, but that happens to me sometimes. And I'm like, wow, like I have to put my hair up. Sometimes I use like a hair, not just a hair tie, but a hair, like a, what are they called? Like a hair stick, like that I'll just weave through like a bun. I don't recommend going on like e-ticket rides with that because it could loosen up, but it's easier on your hair than a hair tie. So if you want to just protect your hair a little bit. Yeah, I'm sorry. I opened a sad can of worms with mentioning Friends. So I'm sorry for all of that. We are all very sad about that news that happened this week. But yes, don't forget your hair. And sometimes I put extra like bobby pins in my bag. So that especially if I have put my hair up in something and something's just looking funky halfway through the day, I'll put my pins in. And I do take a tiny little mini hairbrush. If I leave my hair down, I take a little tiny mini hairbrush with me into the parks, which I've made the mistake of not doing that. And then I had to put my hair up because it looked awful midday. So
yeah. Well, I mean, both of us have such long hair that I will, even if I pull my hair back, after I get off those fast e-ticket rides, I have to pull my hairbrush out to brush it through because my hair will get so tangled that by the end of the day, it will be painful. So I have to take a hairbrush in with me, even if I don't have my hair completely down. But just having the ability to braid your hair quickly or throw it in a ponytail or get it out of your way, off your face, off your neck, all of those options, you want to make sure you have the ability to do that.
So another mistake that I've seen, I have done this myself, honestly, and I've seen other people do it, but taking more than you need to carry. I'm a notorious overpacker. But this is mostly if you don't have a stroller. I feel like if you have a stroller, take the things. Take everything that you think you'll need. Just do it. It's not going to hurt anything. Like, take the things.
I will say the caveat of that though is realize that if you're taking a bus, you have to be able to hold the items and fold the stroller to be able to get in and on the bus with the child too. So you've got to make sure that like one person can hold all your stuff and the kid while the other person holds the stroller to get on the bus. So
yeah, you have to make sure that you can physically carry everything you put in the stroller, but maybe not long distance for if you have a stroller. So, but this was another one that came from my husband because he was like, don't take like everything. And I think it's because he watches me do it. I was like, thanks.
Or he gets stuck holding everything when no one else wants to hold it.
He wears his cargo shorts and puts his water bottle as cargo shorts, and like, more power to you, buddy. Like, I have to have a backpack or something. But yeah, no, think about what you absolutely need. Think about what maybe you can get in the park if you need it. That's small. I would say you still should probably pack some sunscreen, a small one at least, and things like that, just because those are really expensive to get. But don't take more than you need to carry, because sometimes, especially if it's hot out and you have a massive backpack full of stuff, your back is gonna be just wet all day, which is so gross, but true.
Yeah. It is so true. Been there, done that. Not fun. And speaking of strollers or non-strollers, another mistake that we have seen families make is leaving valuables in your stroller. You may be at the happiest place on earth or the most magical place on earth, but people will still help themselves to your valuables if they are not on your body, on your person, and safely away from where people can grab them. So my favorite hack that I always do, that I've talked about before, is I put our non-valuables in a bag that does stay in the stroller, and then all of our valuables stay on me in my bag, so that way it doesn't get left behind and there's no risk of it being misplaced or taken.
Yeah, that's such a smart tip. I think it's very easy to get lulled into that sense of like, oh, this is a magical place and everybody paid to get in here, and so it's a safe place. And I'm like, yes, Disney does do many, many things to make you very safe, and they have eyes everywhere. So that's great. And I'm really happy that they have that. However, they can't protect everything all the time. So just like imagine if you were walking down the streets of New York or Paris, would you leave your stroller parked on the side with like all your valuable stuff? You wouldn't. So just keep that in mind. It's just the population is there. and it could
Yep.
get stolen. And Erin also says, so the squirrels, they'll eat things out of your
That is
out
also
of your
true.
stroller.
That is also very, very true. Do not leave food in your stroller because it will be gone. The squirrels will take it.
Mm-hmm. And it's really sad. Like, I've even heard people being pickpocketed at Disney. It doesn't happen that often, but I have heard of it happening. So, just a general awareness that you are in a place with other people, and not all people make great decisions. There's going to be a certain percentage of the population that's there that might do something like that. So just be aware of your surroundings and your possessions at all times.
Yes. Agreed.
Next up is one that I'm definitely guilty of. This is forgetting sun protection, which I'm actually really very careful about this usually. But sometimes your just brain forgets to put on sunscreen or bring a hat or wear sunglasses. I will tell you, especially in Florida, also in Southern California, you need something for your eyes for sure because it's really bright there. And your kids too, at least a hat to protect them, sunglasses if you can. And sunscreen friends, just sunscreen, seek shade, wear long layers if you can to cover up your, like, I have a history of skin cancer in my family. So this is like really near and dear to my heart, that everybody takes care of themselves this way. I know you're on vacation, but that sun is really intense and you're going to look like a lobster and maybe put yourself at risk. So wear some sunscreen.
And I mean, I have even been guilty of, we'll be in queues most of the day. They're all covered. But there are still lots of minutes out of the day that you are walking in between that you are exposed to that sun. So regardless, you make sure that you are making a smart choice for your skin.
Mm-hmm. And Maria says reapply sunscreen as well. So yes, bring some sunscreen into the parks for you. Even get a tiny little stick or something if you need it, if you don't want to carry a big bulky tube. But do reapply, especially when you're sweating a lot. It's easy for that just to slide off you. So you're going to need more sunscreen than you think you do, just like everything else. And if you swim, same goes for that. Make sure you reapply.
Yes. Okay, next on our list of mistakes that we see families making on their Disney trips is not budgeting enough for things like food, souvenirs, all those types of things. Do a little research, figure out how much you might need for those things to avoid that sticker shock of getting into the Emporium and seeing that the stuffed animal that your kid wants is $30 when you expected it to be $20.
Yeah.
You got to look around and see what you're anticipating. Do a general check on prices so that you know what to budget.
Yeah, and I think like Shop Disney is really great for that too, as a resource of general baseline prices for things. I will say sometimes you can get things on Shop Disney cheaper than in the parks because you can get discount codes for stuff. So just, keep that in mind. That's a possibility. And this was something that I actually asked my husband. This was on his list of things. And he's like, the sticker shock of being like, oh my gosh, this sweater costs $120. Like,
yeah,
it's a lot. Like, if you're not used to it and you walk into Disney and you're like, everything is so expensive. If you're at least aware of that before you go in, then you're like, okay, I knew this was coming. So I'm good. Right. I got this,
Also helping your kids be aware of that too. I know that can be hard for little kids to kind of grasp and understand, what $10 looks like versus $20 versus $50, but kind of helping them understand that, our budget says these are the types of things that you can get for that budget, not, just go pick something out. And then them coming back with something that is $100 toy and you going, no, that's too expensive, put it back. So helping your kids through that process too, because I know that especially mine are little, they're only 5 and 7. They barely understand what the value of $1 is. So, giving them some choices or explaining to them like, okay, or helping, my oldest is to the point where like, okay, let's look at these prices and see how much they are. Let's look at the numbers. Let's figure out if you have enough, use it as a teaching moment if you are able to with your kiddos, but also making sure they understand your budget too.
Yeah. And we have mentioned this before, but the possibility that maybe you buy some things at a local store or something before you go that's Disney themed. They have a lot of merchandise out there that's Disney themed that it's a lot less expensive than the parks, and maybe stashing it away in your suitcase. And I know that Kirk from Walrus Carp, he uses like Tinkerbell gifts for good behavior, and they give extra toys and things on their gifts. But just maybe buying a souvenir, you know, you may maybe get them one there, but you also have a couple of small things tucked away. We've also talked about glow sticks and stuff that you can get at the dollar store before you go. Just keeping in mind that like there's other options for your budget. If you can't afford a lot of the souvenirs or things that are there, there's some other options to still make that magic for your kids and yourself without, breaking the bank, because it's very, very sad right now. There's so many families that write comments and whatnot on my content that are just saying, I can't afford Disney, we'll probably never be able to afford to go. And that just breaks my heart. And I get it. It's really expensive. It is. And I'm not going to beat around the bush about that. But I think there are things you can do to try to make it less expensive for your family so that you can still have that experience and not have it break the bank. That makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have to do this one because this one's kind of mine.
Yes.
So this one is mistakes I've made at Disney that I would never do again. One of my biggest ones is going on Mission Space Orange. And if those of you who are not familiar with this attraction, I thought it was like a roller coaster or something. This was a long time ago before I knew a lot more about Disney. And I was like, oh, let's go. I do roller coasters all the time and they're great. And they're like this, they handed me a physical card that was like, this is really intense. You have to have not all these problems to go out. I was like, I'll be fine. They always have those mornings. No, I didn't know what I was getting into. Mission Space is not like any other e-ticket attraction. It literally puts you in this tiny little space that is very claustrophobic, where the thing is like right here, and it spins you. That's its technology to make you feel like you're weightless. Is this like a centrifugal force? Is that what it is? And it spins you so that you feel weightless. And that spinning sensation messes with a lot of people in their inner ear and whatnot, including myself. My husband and I, he doesn't even get motion sick. We felt so awful. We had to lay down the rest of the day, and it totally took out a day of our vacation. So they do have a side of that attraction, this Mission Space Green, that doesn't have the spinning part of it, that might still be a little claustrophobic, but at least doesn't have the spinning part.
It is claustrophobic. I don't go on it anymore. I've been on it 2 or 3 times, and I was finally like, I don't think I need to do that again.
I think I'm past the time of my life when I'm going to talk myself into doing things that I don't want to do. I just not. I mean, it's one of those things that but
yeah. And someday, if my kids are like, Mom, will you come on it with us? Okay, but we got to go on green because mom can't handle the orange side.
No, I just my son loves space, and so he wanted to go on it. I was like, I can't. Yep. I love you. I can't. So he did go with I think his grandmother, but I was like, nope, I can't even do green. I'm traumatized. I won't ever. I do want to go through the queue at some point just to see it again. It's been so long, but not the ride. So be careful with Mission Space. That's the thing. Don't make that mistake. Yeah. Don't take yourself out for a whole day if you're doing a trip.
And there are a couple other rides that can be said for. So just, again, do your research if you're someone that's prone to claustrophobia or, motion sickness obviously is one that a lot of people are aware of. There are various different rides that are better or worse for those depending on your situation. And I, again, will always stress that there are point of view videos available on YouTube. If you're like, I'm not really sure, just go watch it and then maybe decide from there.
And I will say the equivalent to that, in not the exact same ride, but the same kind of feeling, is the Pixar Pal Around in Disney's California Adventure on the other coast. The swinging ones in particular are terrifying and motion sickness inducing, and they are not for the faint of heart. And so if somebody's trying to convince you to go on them, just see what you're getting into. They do have motion sickness bags in that one too for a reason, and they're really scary. So I wouldn't personally put one of my kids in there without them really wanting to do it because it's terrifying. And there's no word, you're not buckled in, you're
Yeah.
just holding on. So
Right. Right. And so it's a lot to handle if you don't know what you're getting into.
yeah.
Are
So
we finally at our last thing on our list? Now, we said before that this list could have been 4 times longer. So keep in mind, this is not a comprehensive list. But the last item on our what not to do at Disney actually comes from our friend Kirk at Walrus Carp. And he sees families that ignore the resorts. And I agree with that because I have been there. I am currently there. I have ignored the resorts on the majority of my trips because, like I mentioned earlier, we're just such park people. We just want to be in the parks all the time. So it's hard, but finding the balance and being able to do that. And that's part of the reason why we are taking our trip that we're getting ready for here in a couple weeks is we wanted some time in the resorts because we never get to do them. So we purposely planned like 3 full days on this next trip to be able to do the resorts. So don't ignore everything that the resorts have to offer.
yeah, and I think, especially seasonal times, you think the Grand Californian,
Yes.
the Grand Floridian and the Grand Californian, they've got gingerbread house displays and, Easter eggs at Easter time. And I've talked about going to Animal Kingdom because you can see the animals without staying there. You can go out and physically see all these really exotic animals, kind of like going on Kilimanjaro safaris, but you just get to stand there and watch them for a while, which is wonderful.
Yes.
And they have really great food there as well. So yes, resort hopping is an absolute must. Not just the monorail line or whatever, or the Skyliner lines, but if you can get to some of those resorts, and you can use Disney transportation, you just can't use Disney transportation from your resort to another resort. So you're going to have to go to like a hub. If I'm staying on like the Skyliner line, I like to go to Hollywood Studios because the buses are right next to the Skyliner station. And so you can easily walk to a bus and hop. So there's a lot of ways to do that. You're just going to have to go to a park then to get to a resort, which is a little bit a longer journey if you don't have a car, but it's worth it.
Yes.
It's fun. Well, I think that's the end of our list, I think, for now. I'm sure there's other mistakes that will pop up, and, feel free to, not that just we'll do, but in general, like that you guys think of, and feel free to chat with us on social media and whatnot. Communicate with us. We also have our Pocket Fam Walrus Carp Discord that we're a part of there as well. And we have a thread for Mom Street USA that we love to have conversations there about park planning anytime. So that's a great place to bring those up so other people know what not to do at Disney.
Yes, we always love hearing from you. You guys are so helpful, and you're part of what makes Mom Street so helpful to others. So we love it when you guys chime in and give us all of your input because you guys have different experiences than Kate and I have. So it's fun to hear what you guys have experienced or seen or done on your trips to the parks. Okay, so let's do our Ask the Moms. So for anyone who is new, we try our best to end every one of our podcast episodes with our Ask the Moms segment, where we take a question or multiple questions from our Mom Street community on various Disney topics, and we will answer them for you guys to help you with your future trips. So our question for Ask the Moms this evening is one that I feel like we get asked constantly, is how many days should I plan for my trip to Disney, whether it will be Walt Disney World or Disneyland? We get this question probably weekly, whether it's in our live, on our social media. We see it asked in so many places. So, Kate, what is your input on how many days you should have at the parks?
Okay, so Disneyland in California, I would recommend minimum 3 days, which is 2 in Disneyland and 1 in California Adventure, because in Disneyland, there's 29 attractions. It will take you a while to get through most of those if you want to try to see most of the things. And then there's significantly less in California Adventure, but it's still a really wonderful park you want a full day at, especially with World of Color at the end. So 3 days minimum. I would say if you want to try to do more and you also don't want to be running around trying to just at like a really unmanageable pace, I would recommend 5 days for a really nice, relaxed-ish family vacation where you can take your time and enjoy and see all the things. So 5 days is what I recommend usually for Disneyland for that pace. And Disney World, I usually recommend a solid week there with a rest day in the middle. That's usually where I head for that. More if you want to make it really relaxed and have more rest time. Minimum 4 days if you wanted to visit each park. You got to do one park per day, but you'll only see the highlights. You probably won't get to see a lot of it. So what about you, Jackie? What do you recommend?
Yeah, I agree with what you said. I mean, obviously, I will defer to you for all things Disneyland because I have not experienced that yet. But with Disney World, I totally agree. I think if you're doing one park per day, obviously it makes sense to do 4 days. If you're doing one park per day and you really want to hit the majority of each park, I would suggest 5 park days because I would suggest 2 days in Magic Kingdom. If you're not doing a hopper option, you're doing just one park per day, I would suggest 5 park days. And maybe one of those days you take an extended break or you do something different. You go to a resort, you don't spend the whole day there. But I really think Magic Kingdom needs a day and a half to 2 days to hit the majority of what that park has to offer. If you're doing a park hopper, you could probably get away with 4 days in the parks because you would have some ability to hop back to parks if you didn't finish everything, depending on your lists and where you want to go and all of that. But I would say 4 days minimum, but I would say something closer to probably 5 to 6 to really, really be able to get through everything at the parks.
Yeah, I agree. Like a 6 to 7 night stay in Walt Disney World and 5 days total. I usually do like, what we do is like 5-day park tickets. And we do kind of like, we do travel days on the other side. So it makes it 7 days total, but they're traveling in and out. And those half days, we do something like Disney Springs or resorts or like something that's not park or swimming at the hotel, just enjoy. And then we do those 5 days, and the day in the middle, we sleep in and do like a half resort day and maybe do an evening in the parks or something like that. So I agree.
Yeah. And we've done stuff like that before. We typically will do an entire day off just because for us, it's a lot cheaper if you don't have to pay for that park ticket if you're not going to use the whole day. That's just kind of the way that we approach it. We really want to make the most of our money that we're putting towards those park tickets. So we want to make sure we're using them open to close. Obviously, those of you that maybe go multiple times a year or have annual passes, things like that, it gets a little bit different with kind of how you fluctuate those park days with that. But we really try to make sure that we do like an open and close. So yeah, we typically will do 2 parks, a full day of rest, whether it be swimming in Disney Springs or resorts or whatever, and then our last 2 parks to end the trip. So that's typically what we end up doing.
And I see Chris over here is making a comment that they did 1.5 days at Epcot and still never got to walk World Showcase. And Epcot is a big park. It's like physically large park.
Yes.
And so you could get tired really easily and then not get to that World Showcase, or vice versa, not get to Future World, which is the front part of the park. So, that's again where park hoppers are great, especially if you have a limited time in the park, but you want to try to go back and hit things you didn't get to. If you're tight on budget, just do 1 park per day for Disney World. It'll be fine and you'll make it. But if you have limited time and you want to get to multiple things, I think park hopper is your way to go, to try to go back and see a couple of things you might have missed. And also World Showcase and Epcot's just great to go for food. It's like a great pop in for a meal in World Showcase.
Yeah, that's one of our areas that I feel like we always have to very strategically plan, especially when it comes to food. Like we have to know exactly what we want to eat because we will just wander and get lost in all of the food options around World Showcase. And it's like, ooh, that looks good. No, focus, pay attention. You have a list. Use your list to guide you.
Oh, yeah. We always go in, if there's a festival, we go in with a list and be like, these are the things that we would enjoy eating, and then like it keeps us on task. Not necessarily like we have to get all of those things, but these are the things we're going to aim for. And we usually get to most of them, which is fun.
Right.
Well, this is a really fun episode. Shall we wrap it up?
Yes. Briefly, I do just want to mention what's coming up next before we end officially. Next week, let me find where we are. Here we
I
are.
don't even know. So I'm glad you know.
Next week. I pulled up the doc because I didn't remember what we were doing. I had to look and see. Next week, we're going to talk about Jollywood because that will be after Kate goes to the first party for Jollywood Nights at Hollywood Studios. So that is coming up very quickly. Kate's trip is coming up very quickly. So many exciting things coming up very quickly. So make sure you follow us on all of the places so you don't miss any of it.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
But for tonight, it's time to say goodnight and to go to bed for me.
Alrighty, well, thank you everybody for joining us for this episode of Mom Street USA. We hope that you learned some things not to do at Disney to help make your trip a little bit more magical for your family and avoid a little bit of frustration. We'll see you next time on Mom Street USA. Have a great night, everybody.
Thank you guys so much. Have a great night.